What's up YouTube, Freight Hero here. Sorry I haven't been making videos lately. I've just been doing Stride to Victory. So I'm doing my Vanquisher Voltage deck profile. Starter Saishin. Saishin gets to eat Great Zeros, so it's basically there to kill starters. It depends on what your meta looks like around you between using this and the new G starter for getting the extra binds in. But I like to kill front row. I might change it, we'll see. He does eat away a precious counterblast, which this deck so desperately needs. But killing starters is pretty important too, so it really depends on, like I said, your meta around you. I'm playing it standard. I might mess around with stands later, but I do run the 8 crits, so 4 Jins to get power to lanes, get you extra soul, because you probably will need it, at least the way I have my deck made. And then unfortunately I wasn't able to get all of the Vanquisher crits, so there's 2 Polluxes in its place. This is the only thing I didn't manage to get at Sneak for some reason. I just did not see a lot of these pulled around me. And then we're running 4 of the Noble Heals because we actually run the Vishnu. I'll explain that when I get to the G zone more. And 4 draws because Narukami don't generate hand advantage, so you need some way to get cards to your hand. They're not a special because you don't really need a special anything, so I just grabbed some random draws that I liked and just threw them in there. On to the grade 1s, 4G perfect guards, pretty much your only way to unflip damage in Narukami other than like Garuda and like the stand. So if you're playing the stand build, then yeah, sure, you can unflip, but without it, you gotta rely on these perfect guards, which is really unfortunate. Especially for the mirror match, because you'll probably be binding those. 4 stride fodder, because this is a stride oriented build, because you want to abuse your strides, so they're there. Nothing to explain really on that. 4 Chain Bolt Dragoons, the new unit that basically helps you get off binds. If you don't know what this guy does, it's a once per turn GB1. You're allowed to bind an extra card when one of their units is bound. So your opponent chooses the card that gets bound from their drop zone, and then you can choose a unit and give it +2. So it's kind of nice for those bigger push turns, and it does help you get their bind zone way bigger. And then 2 Rising Phoenix, personal choice. I like it because, like I said, Narukami don't generate hand advantage, so it's some way to get a rear guard on board and get a card back to your hand. So you have some sort of advantage going on there. I mean, it's like a net neutral, but it's better than just calling a unit and then not having the hand size. But anyway, yeah, that's why I also run the Jins and the Vanquisher crits once I get the playset, because you need the soul, because it's kind of limited, especially if you do plan on using their skills. And then moving on to the grade 2s, we're running 4 grade 2 voltages. The Amber clone, basically, just so you can get more retire binds, and it works in the battle phase. And voltage the grade 4 voltage is a continuous, so you can actually get off more power during the battle phase with this guy. And then 4 Chituras, because he has more hand generating advantage if he hits, and he also can get an extra bind off if he hits, and it's a solid 11k attacker on rear guard. It's a shame he's an 8k ride though, but pretty good, pretty good. Basically, yeah, it's there to accelerate your plays, try to get some cards in your hand. And he works before G-Break, which is probably the best part. And then, last but not least, for the grade 2s, we're running 3 rock climbs. We got 1 SP, probably can't see it because of the focus of the camera, but looks pretty cool. Anyway, he is the Glimmer Breath clone. He will allow you to retire bind a unit on their field of their choosing, and you get +2. It's again to help accelerate the retire binds, and is a pretty solid unit overall. And then for the grade 3s, 4 Vanquishers, of course, because he's the main grade 3 of the deck. The on-stride to retire bind for a counterblast 1 is pretty important, but you burn through your counterblasts incredibly fast this way, on top of your other cards that counterblast. So I really think Narukami needs some way to unflip damage a little easier. And then for the backup 3, 4 Great Composures, if you don't end up riding and you should be striding. At least you're sitting on a 12k body, so it's easier to guard. Um, that's kind of the only reason why he's in there. I used to run Gravity Bolt, I believe his name was, the one that could unlock a unit, and on drive check you could like retire a unit and get it +5 if you drove check a 3. It was there for mostly ripples, but since ripples apparently are not going to be popular anymore because everyone's trying to sell their decks because of the Odysseus hit, which I think is absolutely silly. Same with like Sword Me and Standguards, because they can't play the hyper meta competitive build when they're still solid decks overall. But anyway, that's kind of the only other grade 3 I'd personally run, because I can't find any other decent grade 3s unless you want to go the ERAD route, but then you're going to have to rebuild your trigger lineup, and it's going to be pretty inconsistent, but it could work. Other than that, moving on to the G zone, one Zoros, on hit, retire. Your opponent chooses a rear guard to retire, you get to choose to drop. You know, it accelerates the voltage. I'm sure most of you guys should know what this card does by now. It's been out for quite a while. One Vishnu from the first G Fighters collection. Basically, if you guys don't know why he's in here, it's for the heal trigger can actually trigger a skill. So you go into him if you have the heal trigger and you know they have the perfect guard for Zoros, then they will more likely perfect guard you if they know. So you're basically, if you have the noble rear guard, you can retire and you get to bind stuff. Like I said, it's a backup. You probably will never go into it, but it's there just in case. 2 Conquest, since the main focus is voltage. He's there for, if you have the plays like with the Vanquisher on Vanguard, you can eat 1 front row for counterblast 1 and then use Conquest to eat the other one and you get +10. It's there for either if you run out of voltages or if your voltage is not going to be big enough to warrant going into him over him. And then so there's the 4 voltages. For those of you who don't know what he does, he has an on hit like Zoros for the cost of his Persona flip, and then on top of that he has a GB3, which is the important part of where at GB3 your front row units get +3 for every bound card your opponent has. So once they hit 4 cards in your buy-in zone, it's immediately better than Conquest for the sake of power on your lanes. And as long as you don't play against a Master Tire deck or something, and you actually get your Chain Bolt Dragoons, it should be relatively easy to get a lot of value out of your voltage. So your opponents will have to deal with devastating lanes. That's why stand triggers are a potential possibility. It really depends on your meta, because if you play against a lot of lock retires, there's gonna be struggles with stands. But that aside, pretty solid. Makes for big scary lanes, scare your opponents. It's a different way of having a huge lane game instead of like Royal Paladins, who just inherently like to give power. You get to retire stuff in a deck and then give your rear guards huge power. In a sense, it's a lot more devastating, but in Narukami you don't get pluses outside of like retiring, which isn't that much of a plus, because they're susceptible for rushdowns and not having guard. So yeah, that's the issue with that. But this deck is still in testing. I'm still probably going to make changes, but for now that's how I'm running it. I managed to get this much foot sneak. I'm going to see where this goes, and I'll see you guys next time.